All right, in the last section we're going to do here on the Supreme Court um, is about interpreting the Constitution. And remember, each of these presidents who choose these judges for these lifetime positions that are arguably more powerful than the president, they're going to pick someone who believes what they believe. Right? You're not going to have a Democrat, come out and pick someone who has strong conservative or Republican points of views, and the same, of course, is true for the Republicans. Now, we mentioned that, when your party is in charge of the Senate, and especially now, over the last 4 years with no filibuster, you can jam extreme views in there in a way that historically the filibuster have prevented from happening. There was usually more moderate Supreme Court justices that wouldn't push an extreme agenda. But each president is going to give a judge who supports his or her belief system. And one of the ideals here is this idea called judicial restraint. Okay, and judicial restraint is when the court decides not to overturn laws or cases that have been ruled in the past. Some judges believe in judicial restraint. In these confirmation hearings, you may be questioned, hey, do you believe that the court should be overturning past cases? For example, Plessy v. Ferguson creates segregation. In the 1950s, activist court, or what's been labeled an activist court, overturned Roe v. Wade when they passed Brown v. Board of Education. Now, the reason they did that is because they said, this is not right. Okay, segregation is not right. We're going to overturn the past ruling. Sometimes the court can overturn laws. We know that the McCain-Feingold campaign finance law in 1996 was overturned by Citizens United versus the United States government in 2010, which has to do with the amount of money you can give to a political candidate, which now is allowed that spending or the amount of money to go through the roof. And like, then, do you have to report it? Do you have to say that I supported this when you put the commercials out? These kind of things were all involved in that case. So both of those are examples of judicial activism. Okay, judicial activism is when you are willing to change past laws.
I need a higher chair in the beam.
Sorry. So judicial restraint is the concept that let's not overturn past laws, let's not overturn past cases. Judicial activism is when you are willing to overturn past laws and past cases. It was said that in the 50s and 60s and 70s, during the civil rights movement, that we had a judicial, an activist judicial Supreme Court, and then now they're maybe trying to go back to a restraint. Supreme Court that practices judicial restraint. I don't know. We also have this thing called precedent. So not president, but precedent, right? So when Supreme Court justices are making their rulings, oftentimes they'll cite past cases. They'll be like, well, according to the Loving Supreme Court case, blah, 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 right? So they'll look at past cases and how they decided on things, and they'll use that to shape the current decision. That's called using precedent to help decide these cases. Also, when we talk about these Supreme Court justices, okay, now I'm not giving you.
No, let me tell you something. I have 1,011 adopted me. 1,011 monies.
The last thing I wanted to mention, though, before I was interrupted by my beautiful baby girl, is that some judges are originalists. Okay, the best example of this was Antonin Scalia, who died in 2016. He believed that we have to look at the words as written by the founders. We're not supposed to interpret what they meant, but instead look at the words as written, where then we have the opposite of the originalists would be considered people who see the Constitution as a living document, meaning that it should evolve with time. The picture I chose of Ruth Bader Ginsburg Many consider her to be someone who saw the Constitution as a living document, and some would consider her a judicial activist. She oftentimes wrote the opinions of the more liberal branch of the Supreme Court that would support things like legalizing gay marriage, which was considered judicial activism. And another cases that kind of overturn past laws or past precedent. So this is how the judges. This is how we judge the judges. This is how we evaluate, how we label the judges on the Supreme Court.